Next question here. Speaking of time travel, what are your thoughts on the time travel rules for this film? And does it hold up? Why don't they start by getting more Pym particles in the past?
Oh man,
That's a good question.
So I think because we're gonna be jumping around the kind of timeline of the movie with this question. I think
yes.
To answer the I think to answer the last question there in typical time travel fashion, the reason why they didn't go get more Pym particles, I think, is because everything was dependent on being able to put it back where they found it. So granted, like they had to go and essentially steal some Pym particles in order to actually get the Tesseract from the 70s, but I don't think they could have done that too much. I might be stretching, but the idea that they literally needed to put everything back where they found it is what makes the most sense to me.
I think.
Oh man.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Aaron. I have some thoughts on this, but you go first.
I was going to say, in regards to the second question, I think, too, is their sole focus was on just finding the stones. I don't think they were focusing on, hey, we should get more Pym particles or anything like that. They were just like, when can we get the stones? How can we separate it up so that we hit the right amount of places at the same time? Though I don't know if we have a question about this later or not, but this is going into the time travel type thing, is how the heck did they not figure out that either Clint or Natasha was going to have to bite it? Like, seriously?
Thank you.
We'll touch on that in a bit. We'll touch on it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an interesting team up there. No, I think
salty.
I think you guys aren't wrong about the Pym particle thing and how they need to be things need to be returned back to where they were. I'm just thinking so you have all these smart scientist guys there, and I'm the kind of person who thinks, resource management. We only have so many of these Pym particles that we need. How do we get more? And my first thinking is, we just get more right now. We can solve that problem later and make more once everyone's back. But that's just me thinking, hoard the resources, get as many as you can to do the thing. So.
That's fair. That's fair. I honestly think it was just in order to pull off of a story of this magnitude, I think they had to not necessarily cut a few corners per se, but every single twist and turn of the plot couldn't be perfectly mapped out. So I hear a lot of people screaming about plot holes and contingencies and all this shit, and I'm like, guys. What you're bringing up is really, really small, and what they accomplished is really, really big.
I'm not trying to undermine anything. Yeah. I'm not trying to undermine anything. It's just something that I think about, and when you get to time travel rules, you have to look at it a little bit, because so many movies do different time travel rules. They're all inconsistent to one way or another, and it's just kind of interesting to poke at them and say, okay, does this set of rules hold up to scrutiny? Days of Future Past? Not really. This, we'll see.
You guys will hear about that one in the future.
Wait, we already talked about that. Well,
we will.
They don't know that. We'll talk about that in the future. I'm sorry.
They didn't exactly. Nice. They didn't exactly follow their own rules with this, though. I mean,
yes.
Time travel.
Thank you.
So it's I like the explanation that. Oh God. The ancient one, elder one, whatever.
Mm-hmm. The ancient one, you got it.
Ancient one.
Yeah.
I like the explanation that she gave. I thought that was very interesting. But the thing is that how they explained what time travel did and what it could do did not add up to what happened in the film, at least in regards to Captain America going back in time.
I have thoughts
Bingo.
on that one. I have thoughts.
I was going to say, you
that's
bring
where
that,
I was going to go.
We'll hit that real quick here, because I actually have listened to a couple podcasts since this came out. And I have heard some explanations, but Ryan, if you want to take the floor first, you seem eager to chomp at the bit. Go right for it.
Yeah, well, the explanation that makes the most sense in my head is that quantum travel not only allows time travel, but also timeline travel, being able to traverse the different timelines. It makes sense if they're going to do that, because we've literally left the door wide open for Loki to just pop around, or anybody else to come from all of these alternate timelines, which, despite their best intentions, they've absolutely spawned some alternate realities from this little time heist. So,
Yes.
in order to leave the door open for that kind of stuff to happen, I think quantum travel will also allow for like alternate realities, like folks to come through and fuck things up in Phase 4. So, what I'm thinking is that Captain America, with his quantum suit, went back, replaced everything, and then lived his life with Peggy in an alternate universe. And then after she passed and they had a gorgeous, gorgeous life together, he put the suit back on and went back to essentially where he started, so that he could hand off the shield.
That's how I've been told. That's how I've been explained it in my podcast I've listened to. So, yep, you hit all the notes on the head.
So with that, Ryan, and I've been wondering, like, that's my biggest question from this whole movie, is that specific scene. So, okay, so with the way they explained how time travel works in this specific movie, he would have been in the same timeline as the timeline, right? Even though he put it back, he just stayed. And there was 2 Captain Americas, one frozen, and him.
Yes. But,
am I wrong?
Well, yes, there would have been 2 Captain Americas, but he would have been on a different timeline. Because remember, in Captain America 2, Peggy does say she met a guy after Cap was frozen, and they had kids and everything.
Yep.
So now with him back and staying there, they form a new timeline where she meets this man and they do their own thing together.
See, I think it was him the whole time.
That is actually not possible because the other rule was mentioned from Hulk, and I think it is still consistent. Time is experienced linearly. Any changes made to the timeline does not impact the future. It just creates an alternate timeline, meaning that the line we've been dealing with so far can't be the same one as the one that Cap went back to.
Right, but it is possible that 2 copies of the same person can exist with this time travel. So I think even if I think the alternate reality where Peggy and Steve got to live their life can still be remarkably close to this one, because it still fits what she was saying. It's definitely going to be different, and they may bring up Cap's son by Peggy from an alternate reality. I don't know. Maybe we might see that one day. I think,
And I want to add one thing. So the other reason that this solidifies an alternate can be solidified as an alternate timeline is because of Thanos. In the film, and we'll probably discuss that here in a bit too, Thanos comes from his timeline and travels forward into our timeline. That timeline he came from no longer has a Thanos, and the Thanos we already had is dead. So the experience we've already had with Thanos still happens, but the other timeline he came from, that never happens now.
Right.
So that means Infinity War never happened.
In that timeline. In that timeline.
Let me break it down in a way that makes more sense to me. Robbie, have you seen Dragon Ball Z?
Yes.
The timeline looks exactly like Dragon Ball Z. It literally is the exact same.
Okay.
Because Trunks goes back in time to fix the future, but he goes back to his future. It's still the same. He can only visit other futures to get different results.
See, I've always been a believer in Back to the Future timeline stuff, and they make fun of it, obviously, in this movie.
I like that rule set a lot better.
And one day I want to have a timeline podcast where you guys come on to my show and we just talk about sci-fi timelines and time travel, Terminator, all that shit. Because
don't get me started on Terminator.
Terminator's broken as fuck.
I feel like we can talk about 2 hours of this shit. So let's leave it at this. You explaining it as Dragon Ball Z time, I get. I'll just leave it alone.
Okay. But then when I thought about it more, I'm like, oh, that actually makes a hell of a lot more sense.
Yes,
I think they specifically chose this version of time travel to allow for the possibilities of alternate realities to start branching out.
Yes.
Because that way the future phases can have much crazier shit.
There's going to be a new What If animated series on Disney+. Boom! Got it!
Oh, shit. See, they already knew. They already knew what was coming.
Yeah,
They're like,
they
we're gonna
God damn it,
strategically
you're
do
right.
this so that we can open up like 80,000 more properties.
I feel like this
for
movie's
Disney.
entire purpose was to pimp out stuff for Disney
Yep.
Plus, but we'll
Yep.
get to that. Next question. I don't want to fall too far.